we're Brighton Hove City Council is funded by ESFA, and obviously there's an enrolment form that goes with that, and we're having trouble at the moment kind of asking people about eligibility around residency status, and also sometimes about if they're on benefits, and we are having a lot of resistance about saying that's invading people's privacy. But as I do have two titles because I oversee Brighton Hove City Council's family learning, but I'm also the principal at Friends Centre Adult Education, and we do that day in, day out with all of our learners, and we work with very hard to reach learners as well. We work in hostels on one-to-one, and everybody is asked those kind of questions. So my question to you is, how, in that kind of activity, how do you then get, I'm asking you directly, but I'm asking everybody, how do you evidence or how do you check any of the residency status and proof of eligibility in that? I think you gave a good example, which is why I was going to
they don't have to be on benefits to access our courses. It's ESFA funded. But what I've done, it's been a long time with our tutors, is saying that you don't apologise for asking to fill in a form. Don't say, I'm really sorry, would you mind just filling this in? You've got to start positively, right? Oh, before you start the activity, you just need to fill this in. That's it. And we've spent ages changing our form to make it it's only one page, so it's squished in a little bit. But what do we really need to know? What do we really need to know? So. Most of the time, I think we probably have just a few, and it's usually quite easy to deal with and just say, look, that's the reason we can run these things. It's something to do with our funding, and we haven't had any problems with it. So we don't have to ask them about benefits, which I can imagine would be a problem. Eligibility, we don't call it that. We just say, have you been living in the UK for 3? I mean, I think it's just that.
Yeah, I'm going from the funding terms kind of thing. But it's
I'm happy to show you. I can always bring a form down. I can show it, but we spent a long time making it onto one sheet. So that because the one we have here at City Lit is like a 4 page. It's like
8.
Yeah.
The advance on 8.
I think we had in Lambeth, and it was the same thing. I think obviously it depends on but we do work really hard trying to make it not a barrier, because it's.
I love an example.
And even I think when they say, well, why do you need to know the date of birth? So, I would just say, well, because I have several people call cities in Eastern, so we need to know which one it is, especially if you know. Oh, okay. But a lot of the time it's just a very, very straightforward, and don't apologise, you just have to say that's how it is.
Yeah. I think it would be really useful to share that with people, but one of the issues I had when I was delivering family learning was they actually used the equalities thing against me, because they wanted us to have our learners on family learning programmes who maybe are a very kind of light touch form fill in the same form as somebody who was doing a kind of access degree level thing, and it was horrendous, as you were saying, and it was not appropriate, it wasn't fit for purpose, and we didn't need all that information, but it was a long-term battle, and I never won it before I left.
Would you mind sharing your application
form with
us? Well, if you send it to me.
Send it to you, yeah. I mean, we're just about to change it a little bit again because of the data protection. On the back of it, on the back of this form, we usually say what the children's names and their ages, and then now we're thinking, do we need to know their names? Because we've got to register for a course, and so we've got the adults' names, we've got children's registers. So I thought, enrolment form, do we really need? Don't need that.
I think we send it back to the SFA, don't we?
Yes, so it's kind of the ages are important, but not the names. So I think it's just thinking everything. Look, do we really need this? And that's what we've got.
We've got a really small form as well, because when we were under the authority and controlled by them with the funding, our form was ridiculous. I remember when I used to go out to start a class, I'd be filling in forms for people because they couldn't fill them in themselves, and people would be walking out the door, so you think, I'm not filling a form in. So you were losing people while you were covering the paperwork. But we're the same, you haven't got to be on benefits, but we do try to make sure that every course is filled with like Moncton people first. We've got like a sort of postcode thing where we say to people, we don't mind saying that, if there's any spaces you can go on the course, but obviously it's going to go to Moncton first, because it should be the surrounding area of the school. But we don't see the point either, if you're paying a tutor, if you've got 5 eligible sort of Moncton people in there, why not fill it with 5 other people that are from Pembroke if it's going to run anyway,
So I was going to say, like you, we have it on our enrolment form about eligibility. Sorry, talk to you. But also there is a list of criteria somewhere, and I think it's in the funding rules, which we give to our tutors so that they can just check if somebody ticks that box to say that they haven't been in the country for 3 years. And I'll see if I can find it.
There is an EEA,
Yeah,
and you can
yeah.
go with the EEA list, but it's that kind of resistance from tutors of going, oh, I find that, and it's just like, well, actually, we won't get the funding
Yeah, and that's
if these forms aren't filled in, and it was that kind of, it was just interesting to see how other people kind of approached it as well.
We do actually, I was thinking, I forgot to say, we do actually run an ESOL and maths course out in the community, and we do have to do eligibility, and they do have to really improve, but that seems to be okay, that seems to work on that. I think a lot of people feel that that's quite acceptable, because they would normally be paying quite a lot of money for that course to do that, but of course it does get very intrusive if you're saying, someone's saying, oh, can you bring in the marriage certificate, can you bring in, so I think it's same thing, we haven't really had any issue with that. I do think we spent a lot of time with our tutors, and I don't want to spend hours and hours, because there's a massive diagram, isn't there? Okay, we haven't got this.
Yes.
I mean, I have to struggle, so luckily we do have an admin team, so I thought, right, we just do they just flag it up if there's something, and we try and send someone out to work with them, because they
Right.
don't enrol here, they enrol with
No, that's
class.
that's most of
So that's, that takes time, it's teaching time, isn't it?
Sorry.
Just add, we've got a very, if I say curriculum friendly MIS department, Management Information Systems, and we got them to design an enrolment form specifically for family learning that's only on 2 pages, and it has pictures on it as well, and it just makes the world of difference when you're asking a parent, and it's actually photographs of family learning classes that are on it. So I've sent that on, and you can share it with people, but they're quite particular about what kinds of courses we can use that for. And then for the traditional courses or the slightly longer courses, they want more information, but we take the same approach as you. You just need to fill that in. It allows you to come on the course, and actually teachers, I don't think, feel comfortable asking for eligibility because they think it's intrusive, but I think they get used to it, and the learners don't actually mind because it's part of the actual induction process, and and it's in the learner handbook. But I will send the picture on that's useful.
Sorry, I was going to say what we do part with our tutors as well, particularly for our EAL families, is we have a little workshop. One of our coordinators is Polish, so she has the enrolment form in Polish, and she literally does a session with our tutors completely in Polish, and they have to fill out this enrolment form in Polish, well, not in Polish but in English, but she tries to put the tutor in the place of one of our EAL learners, and they really gain so much from it, because it gives them that understanding of how our learners feel when they're actually it's brilliant session.
When are you introducing the enrolment form? Are you doing it right from the get-go?
We normally have kind of a workshop where we kind of go out and sell the kind of course that's coming up, and often then the enrolment forms are done at that stage as well.
So we've removed the enrolment from the initial. We have an information session, which is the first session, and then when hopefully families, learners are on board, they're interested, and they've had a go at whatever it is they're going to be doing on the course. The following week, when they return, because they're interested, that's when we introduce the enrolment form, and they're given a bit of a heads up really before we introduce it, because it can be off-putting, because ours is really long as well.
Okay, so moving on from the barriers of forms and paperwork, and back to the topics which both our presenters were covering there, in terms of outreach and in terms of using or engaging parents. Does anybody either have any questions for the two presenters, or want to make a point about what they are doing, how we can improve it, what kind of innovation is in either of these areas? Juliet?
One of the things I'm really struggling with at the moment, I think it's a barrier for everybody delivering family learning, is there doesn't seem to be now a really kind of strategic driver or policy driver that links to schools that actually recognises the value of this work. And I think it would make everybody's life so easy if it wasn't dependent on a brilliant head who did it even though she doesn't have to. That was something that really struck me, she does this, she doesn't have to. Actually understanding that this is your core business, and that your kids are only in school for a very short period of time, and what's happening outside that time is really significant. And the value of learning that parents transmit by osmosis, by being in a family learning program, and says, you know, actually learning is something that's important, makes a world of difference to how children approach school. And that is kind of not recognised at all, and it's something that I really think we should be fighting for.
It's difficult to sell, isn't it? Because I find with family learning, what we've done in the past is we've gone to speak to the teacher. Like, say we've chose a year group, so we target year 3. We're going to the year 3 teacher and say, what are you teaching this term, what's your topic, the theme, what are the children struggling with? And I know, just one I remember was the children, they didn't really get taught to tell the time in school.
Yeah.
It wasn't, it's something that's like we covered that they've never really got enough time to focus on. So obviously it was going to help the class teacher if we did a family learning course, but with the children to help them learn the time. So it's selling it in a way that's going to help the teacher, it's going to help the children, and then it helps the parents, because obviously the parents were coming in, half of them couldn't tell the time either, so they were learning how to tell the time with the kids. It's making it, I suppose, relevant, yeah, to the situation.
I would completely support what Juliet's saying there, actually, because certainly from Learning Work, you might remember an inquiry back in 2000 and, oh my goodness. Oh,
Long time
9,
ago.
yes, 2009. 13,
Yeah.
thank you. 2013, there were a whole series of recommendations about taking family learning forward. We've just whittled these down to just 2, and one of these recommendations is that the responsible departments in government should work across the piece, you know, and talk to each other, because it falls between so many stools. Part of this is because it was family learning was a funding stream that was funded through the adult skills budget. But of course it impacts on the children, the whole family, and all this stuff that everybody knows. And the second one is that we put the department puts a directive or an encouragement or something to every school to say that families should be involved. Family learning is an essential piece of the whole. So that's not great big asks.
No.
That's not saying give us more money. It's not saying give us a dedicated budget. It says we need your backing for this to work, and it has a strong case. So, yes. Sorry,
I'm sorry I was late, apologies. I'm Anne Sarag, I'm at the Reading Agency.
Yes, of course.
And I set up the Summer Reading Challenge about 20 years ago, and I'm also a Brighton and Hove person, so I work very closely with, you know, in kind of always try and do stuff with the libraries on a local basis. We've just done a big review of the Summer Reading Challenge, and for many years I feel the weakness in the programme has been family engagement, particularly where the families are reluctant to join in with anything to do with education and reading. CLPE did a great piece of work some years ago that was on the back of creative partnerships, and they did a Mori poll, and what they realised, a side effect of the creative partnerships money which flooded schools was sort of 2012, 2013, was actually, wasn't so much that there was much increase in the children's achievement in either literacy, numeracy or other things, but it was the opportunity it gave the schools to reach the parents that weren't engaging with their children's learning. Because asking the parents to come in and help with paper mache or paint a freeze is a heck of a lot more user-friendly than can you come in and help with reading time or something like that. And they found that the children actually went home and talked more to their parents about the activities they were doing, because if they went home and said, we did drumming, they felt they could talk about that, whereas the families, you know, they didn't bother going home and talking about what they did in math or what they did in numeracy or something. So I think there's that going on. There's also, you were talking about having a proper stream or a policy. ECAR, Every Child a Reader, I think might be our driver here, because we've just done a review of the Summer Reading Challenge and spoken to the Child Action Group, that's one, isn't it? Child Poverty Action Group. And we've talked to ECAR, talked to Louise Zahar in Brighton and Hove. Do you know Louise? She's very big on ECAR, and the whole sort of thrust behind Every Child a Reader is it can't just stay in school, it's got to engage with families, and there was funding attached to that. And some places, and actually Brighton Hove's a good example of where they've held on to some funding or they've created some more support. So I think that what we're going to do with the Summer Reading Challenge is we're going to look at actually implementing some sort of joined up work, perhaps using ECAR as a hook, perhaps finding some authorities that want to work with us who are perhaps doing some work with families, have good links with libraries, because I think actually in some ways if you're trying to look at what impact this might make, we better start with authorities where the partnerships are already reasonably solid, so you've not got to start necessarily building with the partnerships. Portsmouth is an area that's keen to do this as well. And I think it might actually, it helps the school, because the schools are going to have to start having in their development plans how they engage with parents in a more formal way than I think they do now. And I think ECAR might be a driver behind that, so that might be a policy. In the inclusion mapping that's been done around the Summer Reading Challenge, a lot of the data that comes back says that the participants in the Summer Reading Challenge are often reflecting the community profiling in terms of ethnicity and need, but the real trouble spot is still, for many authorities, the kind of the white working class disengaged. So I don't know if that's something that maps with your...
I think if you want to engage with the forum, which is bigger than this, and with wider flag membership, if you want to send an email, we can put that through, asking people to respond directly to you. And I think we would really like to hear, maybe this afternoon at the forum, a wee bit more about that programme and how you're taking it forward. We are actually, Ren work are actually engaging already with somebody else from the reading agency in terms of science and reading. So I'll catch up.
Yes, catch up, yes.
We've also got somebody here back from, the original Family Learning Forum had representation from Parent Zone, or it was just after that, and we're very glad to welcome Parent Zone, but Parent Kind, sorry.
Until very recently, PTA UK.
PTA, yes. Sorry, getting them all mixed up. Back again. So what's your view in this engaging of parents, engaging of families? What do you do? What do you recommend? How do you think the status of this is?
Well, it's very encouraging to hear. I mean, our point of view is that if parents are actively engaged in the education of their child, then it increases attainment and makes for a better educational experience for children as well, for all the reasons of, gaining self-confidence, and even just parents talking positively about education, which someone has mentioned before, improves things for them as well. So, we're very supportive of things like the family learning initiatives, and it'd be great to see, like the two things you mentioned, Susan, that aren't that big an ask really, but of sort of capturing evidence to show that family learning and adult learning does also increase attainment and outcomes for children. So, as well as following up with the parents and seeing what the next step is for them, seeing if there's a sort of a knock-on effect or trickle-down effect for the children as well. Because the evidence does tend to show that things improve for children as well if the parents are quite positively engaged in education and their education, and if they go home and read at home, it improves literacy and numeracy and those sorts of things as well. So that's what we say. It's just we think the evidence is there, but it could be more robust, and I think it's parental engagement is not recognised and valued as much as it should be, and indeed we feel could be.
Do you think that's because of funding and time, that it's not given enough time then, or?
I think it's partly that. I think when it comes down to policy making and decision making at government level, they tend to sort of overlook parents somehow. It's mostly about teachers and children, and
see, I feel it should be, I think the school should be responsible for an element of adult education.
Yes, that would certainly help.
We're lucky in our school that we just do it anyway, but I think schools should sort of be made to. I think the PTG grant should be channeled better, because schools can sort of use it for whatever they want. I mean, some schools use it for extra learning support assistants and things where we're lucky in our school we've chose to use it for adult education. I think more emphasis should be put on the adult education, because look at the changes it makes to the children.
Yes, exactly.
Do you think that's exacerbated at the local level as well? Do you don't think the councils are taking it seriously either?
No, I don't.
So that makes it a lot worse.
I think it's an add-on
in
the council, and I think sometimes they put adult education classes on. I'm not saying they should always be in a school, but in buildings that are run down, they're not going to get people there, but it's just something they've got to do. They're ticking a box.
But if you go back to the Sure Start Children's Centres, in my area, County Durham, the 1 Point Children's Centres continue to do brilliant work. But the person I've worked with closely, I've got a class going now in a place called Ferry Hill. She's been told, no, that's not my focus anymore. That's coming from within her own organisation, that is just what we're up against, really.
I think one of the probably real recent disappointments is the social mobility opportunity area funding as well. There's no linkage there to parents and children. So the government's put all this money up to improve social mobility, but everything is focused on teachers and children. How are you going to improve social mobility without the parents? And there's nothing about adults and parents in there, it's all children and teachers.
It's quite shocking, isn't it?
Yeah.
There's a couple of other things I think that are really significant within in terms of policy and why it's not valued. I think the first is, and this is successive governments have focused on parenting. You know, it has been kind of quite punitive. It's like these bad parents need parenting classes. Obviously, they're not saying that in so many words, but that's the approach. And I think there's a fundamental issue there because parenting, how you bring up your children, is private domain. You know, we don't want a nanny state that's saying you will bring up your children, this is how you do it. But family learning is not. Learning and education is part of the actual state domain. It's something that it's perfectly acceptable for a government to kind of focus on. And actually, family learning does many of the same things that parenting classes do, improving communication, but also, going back to the research, right back from Charles DeForge and Janet Goodall and all of those people, say it's the engagement in that home learning environment. How do you influence the home learning environment? You know, family learning can do that, and we need to make that really explicit.
I totally agree with you. We've had that where we've, like we were told to run parenting classes. I found them really uncomfortable. How dare someone sit there and tell someone how to, like, you know, when you've got like a travelling community and then the non-travelling as well, completely different ways of bringing up the children.
Inappropriate.
You know, and then you've got a teacher sitting there telling them how to bring up the children. You think, well, you don't even know the gypsy community and how they, you know, their values and morals and things. And I think family learning is a much better way of approaching the parents and the
and it's throughout a child's sort of educational life as well, because if there's any focus on it within government, it tends to be very much the early years, you know, and they do even in the literature recognise the value in the sort of 0 to 3 age range and say, oh yes, you know, learning at home, and the parents make a huge impact, and then all of a sudden they think as soon as the child gets to school, then it's entirely the job of the school, and it just gets forgotten from that point generally.
I think it's as small as even the attitude of the family home towards the school, because you know, like we found with some children, we know for a fact, you know, the parents would say, well, that blooming school, the teachers, you know, they think they're it and whatever, you know, you could just tell, you know. And by just coming to a course or engaging on something, the attitude of the family changed. They were obviously not moaning about school so much at home. Children start to wear uniform, just as low level as that, you know, the respect thing is...
I've been in reception. One of the first schools I ever worked in was in reception, and there was a parent saying to a 5-year-old, this place, you know, so how is that?
We know that we get that a lot, and then because they've had that experience, and they've been we've got a 4th generation of that attitude basically. It's like the only way you're going to change it is through, you know, channeling it into adult education, really.
And this is really interesting because, I mean, of course, what we're talking about here is not doing things to people, we're doing things with them, which is the underpinning ethos of family learning, community learning, and so on. And as a part of that stage, of course, it's recognising the value of the potential contribution of everyone, including the parents, which possibly we don't do enough of, or some of us don't do enough of, or there are challenges being able to maximise this. It's a shame we couldn't get the other presentation this morning, but we will have this afternoon. So let's leave this in the last 10 minutes of our discussion this morning. How can we maximise the value of the parents in terms of the children's learning, in terms of our aims and objectives in family learning? How can we work with them? What techniques, what approaches can we use? And what kind of things can parents usefully do? I might say that this is the bit that I'm actually most comfortable with, coming as a teacher originally. So coming as a teacher and knowing that you cannot sort things just without the parents' involvement, without the parents' backing, without the parents' alignment with the values that you're trying to entail. So let me leave that open to everybody, or throw that open to everybody. What do you think of this involvement of parents and what can they usefully do? How do we approach it? How can we engage with them? What's the value? That kept everybody silent. Yes, sorry.
I was going to say there was a Mori poll done about 4 years ago, and it said that when they talked to it was about building family capital, and it was asking parents from lots of different backgrounds who they trusted most to give them advice about their child. And I think it was really like 70 or 80% of their child's teacher probably knew their child the next best than they did. So I think that's already quite powerful. I know that's possibly not the case in every area, but I think it's still that was a piece of work done to try and work out how you target a disengaged family. So they were going to trust their child's teacher before they trusted a website, before they trusted a doctor, a health worker, a social worker as well. And one of the things that came back in our review was maybe trying to grow this evidence base with a value and unlocking some funding. The ECAR person at Sussex was suggesting thinking about going for an NFER grant in terms of actually starting to do some piloting work to demonstrate that evidence, because we all kind of know that there's an impact there, but as you say, it's this way of quantifying it and having evidence to.
Absolutely. Yeah, the evidence is still fairly relatively weak, which is surprising, but it is the case. Hopefully we'll beef that up with what we're just about to release. Any other comments, any other thoughts on this? Yes, Kath?
I think one thought is, we touched on it, I think Dawn mentioned about actually the opportunities where we've missed opportunities to link family learning with whatever happens to be the latest policy or strategy. And the opportunity areas is a really good example of that. That, you know, that's sort of been planned, gone, and opportunity areas that didn't include family learning. But at the moment, there's this whole social integration, which actually includes ESOL, which I think is very encouraging. There's the new standards around entry-level basic skills, and so I think it's looking at the opportunities to hook family learning into whatever's new, because I think we do have this tendency to sort of say, oh, you know, what a shame this didn't happen, or we've missed this opportunity, or whatever, and perhaps it's up to us to turn it around the other way and have a look at what the new opportunities are, because I think as a sector we're up for it and are always looking for ways to promote family learning, but nobody's going to come knocking. You know, so maybe it's that bit about being proactive as a sector.
Yeah. Very good point, Kath. And I think I think there is a two-way street here, as you say. There is, first of all, it'd be much easier all round if government departments did back it, like DWP is starting to, interestingly. But at the same time, maybe we have to be a bit more agile as a sector in our, hate to say, comms and marketing and branding, because that is basically what it is. There is nothing more fundamental to social mobility than the backing and the changes and the learning environment of the family. But maybe we're not very good at aligning that with the latest policies, declarations. Maybe we need to be better as a sector to do that, and possibly at the next forum meeting we'll just consider just that, and we'll get a good introduction to today from our two representatives from DFE. Any other comments?
I just wanted to add, we've been, and I shared this with Georgina, we've been measuring wider impact in family learning because it's the so what. So you're going to come and deliver these courses, you're going to work with our parents, but what's the difference? You know, they're not, and this sounds really harsh, and the schools are not just interested that the parents have become more confident or they're engaged, they want to see real hard evidence of impact. And I've got to say, the data that we've got back has been phenomenal. So we're able to say that 99% of our parents believe that their children's behaviour has improved as part of them doing family learning courses. Then we can use that, we collect it rigorously and robustly, we can use that to promote that with other schools who we don't necessarily engage with, and then they can see this hard evidence to engage with family learning. And it's been a really long, hard journey. When I first got family learning, we had probably 200 learners, And I just did a tally before I came out today. So far since September, we've worked with over 2,000 unique. That's from September to this point. But we were talking about it's been hard slog, and it's coming at it from every single angle. But I absolutely agree. It should be statutory in schools. Lots of schools don't know about family learning, which to me is a complete shock. And it needs to be integrated within the policies or the school improvement policies. But we also have, we're very, very fortunate, what we call community learning development officers, and we have 2 for family learning, and their remit, that one of them's a qualified teacher and a family learning specialist, the other one comes from the 3rd sector, and their remit is to engage with schools and partners to create opportunities for family learning, and to promote the benefits of family learning and all of the courses that we offer. And it really does work, combined with the wider impact, and then we host partnership events. And steadily, it's a little bit like cold calling. You know, by doing the legwork, we've managed to. Last year we worked with over 3,000 parents, and this year again we're aiming to do the same. And we've got over 300 target schools across the whole of Lancashire. But it's been hard work over 3 or 4 year period. But you have to sell the benefits to the schools because they're very busy. You'll know yourself, they're very busy, it's another thing. But actually, if you can show that it's going to make a real difference, and you've got your evidence, they're up for it, and it's free.
Yeah,
it's free.
Yeah. We run ours on a shoestring, what we run. I get frustrated sometimes when you hear other local schools and they say, oh, well, it doesn't work for us, and you just think, well, it won't do. It's frustrating. We've done it, we've worked hard, we've had the ups and downs, we've had the courses, like I say, with free things on offer, nobody's turned up, we've had the uniforms, we've done it all. And it's took a long time to get to this, and now we know what we need to do and what makes it work. And we want to tell everybody now. So
we've hosted partnership events, we've had one in the Pendle area, we've recently done one with Burnley Council, so we've latched onto strategies with councils, and what we've done is we've used ambassadors from schools who we've engaged with, and they've talked to new schools about the difference that it's made. They're like, oh my gosh. So the recent one that we did in Burnley was a couple of months ago, and we probably had 10 schools engaging with us. And now we've got 25 plus schools engaging with us in Burnley, so it does make a difference, definitely. But it is hard work, it's not an overnight cure.
2 really important points there, I think, Nicola from Telford and Wrickham. First of all, absolutely about the knowledge of the schools about family learning. I think I've mentioned it to a number of you before. It was a pupil premium event delivering. Started off with the question, how many people either know about family learning, how many people work with family learning. This was head teachers, mostly in primary schools, but some secondary. There were half a dozen hands that said yes to either. Most of them hadn't even heard of it, which was very, very amazing. But by the end of the presentation, and I don't think it was because I'm a great presenter, I think it was kind of, oh, why have we not heard about this before? The whole hall said, yes, we want to work with these people. What? It doesn't cost us anything, it's already funded, and it does this stuff, so why would we not? But they don't know about it. The other thing to remind people about is the publication Family Learning and the Pupil Premium, which of course is free. We've got hard copies, we've got soft copies, so if anybody wants to use that. But it is very, it is a hard, it's not a hard sell.
No, I think it's
but it's an effort.
I think it's using ambassadors. I think that's
sorry. Yes, and that's a really good point, I think, Claire.
I
Using
think,
ambassadors.
But there is that point about building it as well, because I know we've had a case where you've got in and it's kind of stuttered and fallen off, whereas as you said, it takes time, doesn't it?
I think it's a really easy sell. We don't have to extol the virtues of Telford and Wrekin. Every school will want it. It's very easy for all the reasons we just talked about. But what we haven't got is a really interesting point that you made about your learning development officers with a specific remit for schools. We have them in the community for community learning across our borough, but not for family learning. And I think that makes a difference because the schools, the schools will pick up on it. They'll be very excited about it. But when they sort of it comes, the reality hits in where we have to provide 2 rooms, one for the course, one for the creche, and we have to approach the parents ourselves. Well, my learning mentor is not a learning mentor anymore. They're a business development opportunist in some whatever description they may have now. And it's that link, it's that bridge between the parent and the school. that we find so difficult to maintain and the momentum to keep going. But if it was part of policy, if it was part of the fabric, if it was a part of people proving it, whatever else. Yes.
We have done it by stealth, and we've attended it in schools where we were struggling. Because you've got to think of everything, haven't you? I've got huge targets, I thought we need to just try everything, anything and everything. So we've attended parents' evenings, attended new student intake evenings, and we've got the girls there with the stand. The parents are interested. We've got really lovely marketing. We're very fortunate with that. The parents are interested in that, and then before you know it, you can get a group of 5, or we'll run with a group of 5, and if it's good, they'll tell other people, and that really hasn't taken a lot of effort from the teaching side, or the teacher's time. That's come from us, but it is hard. It is hard.
I think the thing you said about embedding it in induction is really important, because when you've got people who actually are quite lacking in confidence, if you invite them onto a learning program of any kind, they're going to think that they're a deficit, that they're not doing it right. And so if you're doing it at induction as a kind of key offer that every parent gets, then it becomes something that's not judgmental about what they're doing.
I do think there's something in attaching to your local authorities. So with Burnley, that we're just recently attached to, we just set out to get ready for school. It's gone out to all the schools, and the replies are coming back in from schools. They attended their partnership event. Yes, we want that for our parents, but it isn't an overnight thing.
Okay, just to wrap it up then, anything that anybody's got to share in terms of engaging parents, engaging families, engaging within the pupil premium, then please do send it. We'll send it out to everybody to share it round. That's great. The second thing I'd like you to think about, and maybe just have a couple of points just now, is what would you like the forum to do? How can the forum help? How can we focus our efforts more cohesively towards the social mobility agenda, for example? What could we actually usefully do? What would be the next topic? What can we produce? Any initial thoughts are great, but if not, then I will email you all and ask you, and then nag you if you don't reply me. Any thoughts on that? What can we do?
Perhaps a mental health and wellbeing angle. A slightly different approach to social inclusion to measure the impact.
Now that's really interesting, because the first meeting of this year was focused on that, mental health, wellbeing in families. In fact, we've got all the outputs from it. So possibly I can send these round again and see, is this enough? Should we be doing something else with that? Because yes, you're absolutely right, it's the different angles.
I was at that meeting, and the DFE person that was speaking was saying that they'd focused their efforts on schools, if I remember.
But she was considering writing in families in the green paper, but it was an afterthought because she'd never really heard about it. And this is another barrier, isn't it? That because departments tend to work in silos, that they don't always know or always see the linkages very easily.